Hi, everyone. My name is Raquel with RedmondMag.com, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us. The topic of today's webcast is Digital Transformation and the Cloud, Expert Best Practices for Transforming Your Enterprise, sponsored by Esker. Before I begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping details. There will be a Q&A session towards the end of today's presentation, so please type any questions that you may have in the Q&A box. Esker has also provided a couple of resources which can be found on the right-hand side of your console, so please take a moment to check those out. And finally, this webcast is being recorded, so keep an eye out for a link in your email so you can rewatch the presentation or share it with a colleague. And now I'd like to introduce you to our two speakers. First up, we will be hearing from Howard M. Cohen, Senior Resultant for HMC Right Now. And following Howard, we'll hear from Dale Phillips, the Business Development Manager at Esker. So we are in for a great event, and with that, I'll pass the time over to Howard to get us started.
Thanks, Raquel, and hello, everybody. I keep on saying good morning, and I realize for some of you it's already after lunchtime. Today's topic is, as Raquel said, digital transformation and the cloud, expert best practices for transforming your enterprise. And also, as Raquel mentioned, I'm Howard M. Cohen, Senior Resultant at HMC Right Now. This is a little quick background on me. Senior Resultant basically means that I'm all about results, and I'm somewhat older than most. Okay, let's get right into the topic of what exactly is digital transformation according to the experts. Let's start there. Well, that's interesting. Digital transformation can refer to anything from IT monitors. Well, yeah, this is Gartner, okay? And so they're going to use lots of big words, and strikes me that it sounds more like they're defining digitization than digital transformation. So not exactly on target. The folks at Forrester, the first thing they say is absolutely spot on. Digital transformation is not just about technology. We'll be learning more about that as we go on. And then they get into their, speed and nimbleness and exploit technology. Okay, whatever. Harvard Business Review, and they make a very true statement that intimates that it's about people. Digital transformation requires plenty of talent, plenty of people with great skills, all working together in collaboration. So, digital transformation is all about people getting together to do amazing things. McKinsey, an effort to enable existing business models, not really defining anything here. So, okay. The folks at Boston Consulting Group point some things out that are important. Only about a third of organizations successfully meet the challenge of digital disruption. Be disrupted, be the disruptor, or be disrupted. And BCG puts their finger right on that and what decisions you should make. In addition to the analysts, I thought it'd be a good idea to hear from some of the technology companies that we all work with, starting with Citrix. And I have to say, Citrix gets it flat out wrong. Amazing. Digital transformation is the strategic adoption of digital technologies. Now, that's involved, it's included, but that's not what it's about. I suspect former executives at Citrix would agree that it's not about that, but we'll get into what it is. Red Hat, digital transformation is what's happening. We're not doing digital transformations. They're just happening. It's not a product. It's not a solution to be purchased, but it affects everything. Well, that is true. And then, of course, we always have to at least take a peek at Microsoft. Digital transformation about reimagining and, great. It's maintaining your competitive advantage in a digital first, I guess also cloud first, mobile first world. They dart around it, but none of them quite put their finger on it. So what exactly is digital transformation? Well, for me, digital transformation is not so much about the paint as it is about the painting. That is to say, it's not so much about the digital tools we use to get things done better, faster, or less expensively. More, it's about what happens when people take those tools and do wonderful things with them. Those tools may be tablets like we see here, or they may be laptops or desktop computers. They may be servers, whole cloud systems. But whatever the technologies are, it's all about how they enable people. So my take on digital transformation is that it's not so much about technology as it is about what technology enables people to do better. And it takes care of repetitive tasks, does the heavy lifting, if you will, so that people can do more. And the work that they do is more satisfying, more fulfilling, more profitable work. And let the technology take care of the simpler stuff. Digital transformation is all about using technology applied to improve life for people. Okay. It's important to point out that digital transformation is not so much a project with a beginning and an end. Okay, it's not. It's not like Dr. Jekyll turning into Mr. Hyde. Boom, done, and hopefully back again sometime soon. And certainly, bringing it more to date, it's not about our good friend Bruce Banner turning into the Hulk. I love that. I just love that transformation. Let's just look at it one more time. Amazing. Okay, it's not that. It's not a beginning and an end. Rather, it's an ongoing process where, like this one, the ape becomes Homo erectus, becomes Homo sapiens, and then becomes at the end, I guess, Homo computerus, and is back in that crouched position. And this is going to continue going on and going on. So that's really more about digital transformation. Once you started it, you're going to continue transforming and improving and disrupting as you move forward. In the course of this presentation, you're going to hear me refer to DevOps quite a bit. And there's some good reasons. For those of you who are not familiar with DevOps, it's the combination of the software developers who write the software with the operations people who actually run the computers that the software is deployed upon. It's an outgrowth of agile technology in which everything happens in short sprints. In this case, we do a short sprint to create a new iteration of the software. Ops deploys it. Once it's deployed, they grab feedback from the users, get that back to the developers as quickly as possible so the developers can do the next iteration. And that gets deployed and we get feedback, and then the next iteration over and over and over again with the goal of achieving continuous improvement through continuous deployment. For those of you who are not familiar with DevOps, there are companies that are now using DevOps to upgrade their software more than 60, 70 times per day. Incredible environments, and DevOps enables that. So I asked myself, what happens when you combine DevOps with digital transformation? What could possibly happen? What could we bring out of that? And I think what you're going to find is instead of CI/CD, we're going to end up with CD/CI, or more to the point, CDX/CI, continuous digital transformation through constant innovation. And that's exciting. I mean, think about a world getting better and better and better, and it's the digital world that serves your business and increases your income and improves your quality of life. That's fantastic. So what does it take to do that? Well, just as we know that it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a team to make a difference. It takes a team to create and accomplish a digital transformation. In this case, it's a digital transformation team. So let's see who's on that team. Of course, you've got software engineers, cloud computing specialists, product managers. As I pointed out, DevOps leaders, people who are helping everybody learn to adopt that DevOps culture of everything moving as rapidly as possible, because you need everybody on the same page. And that, of course, includes agile methodology project managers. You need financial managers. There's money involved here. You're going to spend to make the digital transformation happen, and you're going to receive a return. Somebody's got to stay on top of that to make sure that you're achieving those goals. You'll need data scientists to help you interpret what all the data means. You'll need solution architects to keep on creating the next iteration within your digital transformation. User interface designers, trainers to help people understand how to use all this great new stuff that we're using. Writers to describe it and to keep everybody updated on what's going on. Brand strategists, forensic analysts, ethics compliance managers to make sure everybody's operating in a way that has integrity. And just a nod back to Citrix, workplace technology managers to make sure everybody has everything they need. Okay, so that's the members of the digital transformation team. Now, before they can start doing anything, there are some questions that we really need to answer before we begin to build our digital transformation plan. The first question, as with almost everything, should be why. Why? Because Simon Sinek tells us so. No. Starting with why is a great idea because then you understand what your purpose is. Then you understand what your goals are, what your objectives are, what's driving you to do what you're doing. So I always recommend start with why. And I also recommend you read the book. Great book. In the case of a digital transformation, you're going to begin by creating a transformative vision. A vision of what life could be like if you were to take technology and find great ways to improve everybody's lives and the way they do what they do. Also, you really need to have a good grip on your mission. What is it you're trying to achieve? What is it you're trying to do for everybody? So you want to define your mission. And then, of course, that brings us to fundamentals, goals. What are your goals? Some things about goals. First of all, they all need to be clearly defined. You can't have vague goals. They need to be clearly defined, fully quantified, so you understand what those goals will turn into in a measurable way. And then you have to prioritize your goals. What are you going to get done first, second, third? What's most important, and so forth. Now, remember that you need goals for your company, certainly, but you also need goals for the people who make up that company. And some special people, your stakeholders. And there are many stakeholders. We'll take a look at that in a second. You also need to define your scope. Yes, that's a scope. What is the scope of your transformation? Are you going to transform everything all at once? I can almost guarantee you if you try to do that, you will fail. You'll bite off more than you can chew. So you really need to get very definitive about your scope. And then, as I mentioned a second ago, you need to define your internal and external stakeholders, the shareholders who hold equity in your company, the government that regulates you, your customers certainly are stakeholders in your business, the suppliers you work with, the community you work in, the many communities you work with, society at large, the people in your company as well as their families. All are stakeholders in your business. So define and understand who your internal and external stakeholders really are. And then you need to obtain their commitment. Digital transformation is nearly impossible to achieve unless all the right people are committed to getting it done. That starts right from the top. You need executive sponsors. And you need everybody pulling the rope the same way. You need that DevOps culture where everybody is willing to contribute to making happen what you're there to make happen. So some general questions really quick. Is the organization ready for this digital transformation? Do you have all the right people on the team? Do they all understand what their roles are, what they're there to do? And are they all aligned with each other well? Is there consistency and contiguity between everybody? Will any of them need new skills? Will you need to be providing some training? Will any of them need to be replaced with people who can do the job better? Or will you need more people that you don't have yet? Money is just as important. You need a budget to get this thing started. Part of your planning process will be a more exacting budget, a more comprehensive budget. But you need to get started, so you'll need a preliminary budget. Do you have a strong DevOps culture? And I keep coming back to that. It's important. If everybody isn't participating and contributing to making this happen quickly and accurately, you're going to run into problems. Things are going to get dropped, and you're going to have to go back and fix them. Are your team members comfortable with agile methodologies? Are they happy with doing things in sprints rather than planning out everything and then starting to do each thing one after another and discovering what they forgot before? And then finally, are all the people in your company or your organization comfortable with technology? Are they ready for a digital transformation in the most important way, or are they technology averse? You're going to have to make some decisions about that when you discover that you have technology averse people. Another thing is, where is your organization on the classic IT maturity model? This is a good example of the IT maturity model, starting with the basics, where IT is basically a cost center. It's something you kind of do ad hoc because you need computers or something like that, and it's not very organized. But as you move along through level 1 to level 2, you're starting to define your processes. You're making them repeatable and measurable at the same time. You're getting to a place where you've rationalized technology, and it's an enabler of your business. And then finally, it's an integral part of your business. It's optimized. It's endemic. It's a strategic asset. It's part of how you do what you do and do it so well. My recommendation is, don't even think about a digital transformation unless you're in this far right area. And the further to the right you are, the better off you are. Because if you're still ad hoc or just barely aware of what you're doing with technology, you don't need a technology transformation. You need technology growth. You need to embrace technology much more deeply before you can begin to transform the way you use it. Okay. So here are some expert suggestions. McKinsey has a 10-step model that is, about 100,000 miles up. It's very broad, very general, but a very good thing to be familiar with. And when you download this deck, you'll have this chart available to you, and you can talk with people in a conceptual way about how you're going to proceed from defining the value of doing this through launching it, making it happen faster, better, and continuing to grow it. The folks at Core DNA similarly have a 10-step model for digital transformation. I think it's a little bit more pragmatic. Establishing your vision, your mission, that's all there. Getting people committed, quantifying and prioritizing everything. We're going to talk about KPIs shortly, but your key performance indicators, how you measure what you do, is critical to knowing whether or not you've been successful, and so forth and so on. My suggestions, okay, first of all, know what you know. Before you start out to perform any kind of digital transformation, know what you know what your environment is all about. Complete a current state inventory of everything in your IT environment. What equipment's in use? Who's using it? How is it configured? What applications are being run on that equipment, and which departments or lines of business own those applications or depend upon those applications? You also want to take a complete inventory of your telecom estate. What's your telecom estate? It's every circuit you lease from carriers, every wireless account you have, literally everything you use to communicate with anybody. You should know what contracts you have in place before you begin to do anything with technology, because it is the underpinning of how technology communicates. So you need to know what you know. Then you're going to set about figuring out where your opportunities lie. What are your digital transformation opportunities within your organization? What processes are out there that would really benefit from being automated? Which are the ones that could be moved from people to automation to improve the way things are done in your organization? Moving them from people to automation means they get faster and they get less error prone, because technology is less error prone than people. Maybe you have systems out there that simply require upgrading, and this is a great time to do it. Or maybe you have applications that would be better off being moved from monolithic software development to cloud native microservices and containers, moving all over the cloud effortlessly to be where they need to be most efficient. Everything is moving over to cloud native, and soon there will be no monolithic, big hunk of code software anymore out there. That's going to be a big driver of digital transformation. So where would you be best served to begin? Once you've identified them, quantify them. What do they mean numerically, financially, performance-wise? And then prioritize them. Which ones are you going to go after first? Which second, which third? Your decision-making there may be very counterintuitive. What you want to start off with, now, guess what I'm going to say here. You want to first and foremost identify good pilots. No, not pilots like these guys. Pilot projects. Projects you can undertake that are smaller, usually, that have a better chance of having success and being done successfully early, because you want some early wins. You want to be able to show everybody that they have reason to believe that this digital transformation thing is good for the company. It's good for them. You want them to buy in even more deeply. And the more visible these pilots are, the better off you are, because you'll have more of the organization raising their hands and saying, yeah, this is great. These are also a great opportunity to work out your digital transformation process challenges in a smaller environment rather than taking on the big, big rocks. They'll still be there when you've gotten a couple of good pilots under your belt. You're also going to have to go beyond budget. Budget's not the be-all, end-all of what we're doing here. Yes, you need to establish a budget, but really you need to establish a complete financial plan. There are a lot of people you're still going to have to convince. This financial plan needs to spell out the required investment for each transformation you're producing. It needs to project what the return on investment is going to be in the first year, in the fifth year. Also the total cost of ownership. Everybody mistakes the price up front, what you pay to get the thing installed, to what it's going to cost to operate it over time. That's very important. Even though TCO may be an overused acronym, the concept is critical. You need to know what your total cost is going to be, not only over the first year, but over the first 5 years, so people have a good set of context to be operating within. Okay, so now we know what our pilot projects are going to be. We've established a financial plan for them. Now it's time to create the project plan, the functional plan. What are we going to do? You need one for each project. You need a project team leader for each project, and a manager, a finance manager, somebody who's responsible for the dollars. You need team members to do the various things that need to be done. And you need to determine, very simply, who's going to do what, when, and by when, and what will successful performance look like. You're going to be using Agile methodology to manage all of this. You're going to have to establish DevOps-style feedback loops so you can get feedback from everybody quickly to know where you're going right and know where you're going wrong, because you're going to continue to perform those rapid iterations, not just when and where necessary, but everywhere. Okay. I mentioned that we're going to get to KPIs, and I'm good to my promise. Some of you may recognize the famous Peter Drucker. Brilliant, brilliant strategist, business guru, an icon in our industry. He was famous for saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. It's alternately said, you can't manage what you haven't measured. So it's not that you can't measure it, it's that you don't measure it. The inherent there is measure everything. So we're going to talk about key performance indicators. What are the things that tell you things are going well? What are your KPIs? So frighteningly, only half of CEOs surveyed by Gartner have KPIs regarding digital. They don't measure how well their technology is doing. Half of them don't. That's awe-inspiring to me, frightening to me. Please don't be part of that half that doesn't. Be part of the half that does. And let's get that to be more than half. You want to work with your senior executives to quantify the extent to which their particular department, their line of business, what they're responsible for would benefit, how they'd benefit from digital transformation. This is a big part of getting their commitment. If you can show them how it's going to benefit them, they'll buy in and they'll contribute and they'll participate. So it's very important to work with the entire senior executive team to understand how, from an overall organizational standpoint, everybody's going to be best served by the digital transformation work you produce. You need to lay out the journey for them. You need to show them what it's going to look like, and you need to make sure that they have a crisp, clear understanding of what kind of results, what kind of business outcomes they can expect. These metrics, these KPIs, will be influencing everything at the C-level. Every executive is going to look at these metrics to help them make decisions. What am I going to improve? Where do we need improvement? How do I have to change my budget? Where is the money going to the right places? The key performance indicators in your digital transformation will help them. And yes, it will help them to continue to develop and grow and deepen the culture within the organization. So KPIs basically should influence all business decision making. The digital KPI is about understanding where you're making money or improving an existing business model. Well, that's true. And basically, the two are really the same. If you're improving an existing business model, it's a good bet that you're improving the profitability of your organization. So the KPIs should all be focused around that. When you fashion your KPIs, keep an eye toward the bottom line. Does this KPI translate into increased profitability at the end of everything? Remember that the C-suite folks, they stay up late at night. They try to figure out how to solve the big problems. And the better your KPIs, the more you can help them measure the effectiveness of the decisions they make, the more this all serves them, the more commitment you'll obtain in return. This is, again, a very self-iterative process. You need to benefit people for people to want to benefit the process. Keep it rolling around and around and around, and keep on scaling, keep on growing that digital strategy until it encompasses the entire company. Of course, that's big picture, but let's also remember that we need to help where the rubber meets the road. Sometimes you need to see problems coming, and a good KPI will help you. When you see a dip in certain KPIs suddenly, that's a good clue that something's going wrong, something bigger, something more endemic. You need to start investigating, and hopefully that investigation will lead you to correct your course, to change the way you're going or the way you're doing things, to improve upon it. Critical. So big picture, and at the same time, rubber meets the road. And keep on referring back to digital disruption. It's a term that's been around for a while. And as long as it's been around, people have said you can be the disruptor. Uber was a disruptor. Amazon was a huge disruptor. The way books were sold changed completely back in the 1990s when Amazon was first emerging just as a bookseller. Think about how much disruption they've created since. You can be the disruptor, or you can be disrupted. Think about all the mom and pop bookstores that are gone. And beyond mom and pop, think about all the big brand bookstores gone. That's a direct result of digital disruption. Think about it. It can happen to you. So better to be the disruptor than be disrupted. As one expert said, if you're not digital at this point, you're toast. It's a great truth, and it's a driving reason that you really need to start focusing down on the questions we've discussed today. Now, of course, to focus down on those questions, you're going to need tools. You're going to need to be able to put all of this into action. And so in our next segment, we're going to talk about bringing all this digital transformation into your back office, bringing your back office into the digital world. And here, To help us learn about that and discuss that with you is our friend Dale Phillips from Esker. He's a business development manager, and he's going to tell you all about a great set of tools that'll help you. Dale, it's all yours.
Thanks, Howard, and good afternoon, everybody. So the goal with this part of the presentation is to build on the great content that Howard has already covered. And he made a great point, right? A digital transformation is not a tech solution. It's about people, processes, and technology, and how you can build systems that augment people in a way that helps get their jobs done at a higher level with higher satisfaction on a daily basis. So kind of the lens for this part of the discussion is going to be through workflow for either accounts payable or accounts receivable, those back office processes. You know, the idea of being able to move from more manually based processes into more digital processes. And the thing about it is there are a lot of credible voices out there, just like Howard, that mirror, the same type of conclusion. And that is that digital transformation, or digitizing in this case, back office processes, is here to stay. Three of those credible voices are, for instance, the Institute of Finance and Management in a recent white paper where they reflected on the experience of 2020 and businesses having to send folks home. They also had to automate along the way, and they got great results. So their point is, hey, we've moved in this direction. There are proven results, and there's no going back now. They also pointed out that from a solution standpoint, a solution that's cloud-based is really well suited to this type of environment because it gives easy access to the frontline customer service folks, to the payment data, to the billing data that they need to ultimately be able to solve the customer problems, right? If it's an invoicing problem, they can have access to that invoicing data, the payment information, and they can resolve those types of problems and spend more time doing that, interacting one-on-one with the customers as opposed to looking for the data. So it's a real benefit of having a streamlined, digitized process there. And then there's Gartner. And Gartner talks about the fact that organizations are dragged down with what they call organizational debt. And organizational debt could be technology, could be processes, could be siloed data, any number of things. But the organizational debt ultimately slows down the progress of the company. It impacts in a negative way the brand. And they say that a main cause of this is the extensive and expensive set of business processes that are underpinned by a patchwork of technologies that aren't optimized, they're not lean, they're not connected, and they're not consistent. And so leave it to Gartner to coin a phrase for it. They're calling this hyper-automation. And they basically say that hyper-automation, which means automate anything that can be automated, is ultimately going to be the key to both digital operational excellence and operational resilience. So let's take a minute and look at this from the point of view of the processes involved. So first, the AR automation. And this platform that you're looking at, the idea here is it's a single platform, and the processes involved, the sub-processes run all the way from accounts payable, working with your suppliers, through the organization. It involves order processing, and then it also involves account receivable, which is dealing with customer relations, making sure you're getting paid quickly and efficiently. That also ties into customer satisfaction, and the one other piece of that is ultimately tying in to employee satisfaction. The ability to have the information at your fingertips so you can solve problems makes the job a lot more tenable than it is if it's manual and you're scrambling for things. So the idea is we move forward where the work-life balance is more and more important, is organizations who have digitized those processes so their people can more effectively solve problems for their customers are going to retain better talent moving forward. And the idea with this is that from an automation standpoint, all of these processes are ripe for automation. These processes are well understood. They're very complex at scale. At an enterprise scale, they're very complex, but they're understood. And so there are tools like the Esker platform that are perfect for being able to automate these and get great effect. So let's take just a second and kind of drill into this a little bit. So first of all, on the accounts receivable side, this portrays the different sub-processes on the AR side. And the string in the middle there is basically your order. You've gotten a PO, you've gotten a signed contract. That is moved into the system. So now on the AR side, how do you manage it? First, there is credit risk. You want to be able to make sure that based on credit profiles, that you're either extending enough credit so they continue to buy more, or you're backing off on credit a little bit because you're concerned about that risk profile. The next one is invoice delivery. And when it comes to invoice delivery, that's a very complex situation, especially again at scale. It doesn't go out one channel. You might still have some customers who want to receive their invoice postally. They want it by postal mail. Others you're hoping are getting it by e-invoice. Others you might have to be downloading that order from a portal of some kind, or maybe it's coming in through EDI. The point is you need this unified platform that can deal with invoice delivery in whatever format that the customer is used to having it in. And then you can work with your customer to move them, if they aren't in the digital realm, into that e-invoicing realm. So once you get your invoice delivered, obviously collections becomes the next key component. And the thing about collections management is too many organizations, they don't have the collection strategies that have been built out and then are supported by the technology that can present the order in which you should be trying to collect those bills. So you're scrambling from an Excel spreadsheet. You think you're working from either the oldest ones or the ones that are the biggest outstanding AR, but that is not near as efficient as if you have collection strategies that your customer support people can work from to ultimately collect that cash as efficiently as possible. Along the way, one of the pieces is the simplified payment. And there it's just about choice. So where your customers potentially could work with a customer service representative or have a self-service option to be able to go and make those payments pretty much on the fly. And then finally, once you're paid, it's about cash application. So payments come in separately, usually from remittances, as an example. It's very difficult when there are a lot of invoices or statements involved to match everything up and make sure you are applying the cash payment to the correct invoice. Leveraging the AI to be able to look at all those variables and either automatically be able to allocate that cash, or if there's some kind of an anomaly, to at least be able to make suggestions on which invoices you could pay off. That type of efficiency is what really makes sure you can get the cash applied as quickly and effectively as possible, so you don't end up with this nightmare scenario where your customer has actually paid you, but you haven't logged it correctly. It's not visible in the system, and so your collections folks are actually calling them asking for the payment. So on this next one, I apologize, I was one behind. On this next one, we're talking about the order management piece. And for the order management piece, here you have orders. It's the same scenario. Orders come in multiple channels. Those channels could be an email with a PDF. It could be an order in the body of an email. Could be EDI, or again, portals could be involved. You know, the point is you want to be able to bring those into a centralized location so they can all be dealt with. From there, once you get them to the centralized location, it's about extracting and routing those orders. You're extracting the data, being able to see, for instance, if it's a priority order. It might say rush. It might say priority. It might be some other verbiage. You want to be able to pick that up no matter what the verbiage is and be able to move that to a queue for attention quicker than in the standard queue because it's a rush order. You want to be able to ultimately take, and if there's orders that you have seen before, you might be able to process those without intervention. If it's an order that has any kind of an anomaly, it would go into a queue so the customer service folks can deal with it. Once you're past that order extraction and that routing piece, it's about data validation. And when you're talking about data validation, you can imagine invoices, both header and line item information that have SKUs, that have payment information, that all have to be compared to the master data from the ERP systems. And so having humans do that is a much slower and laborious process and also more error prone than if you have machine learning or AI first and machine learning to build on it to be able to make those comparisons, validate that data, and either process that order in a touchless form, or if there's an anomaly, be able to put it into a queue for a CSR to take action. And then when you're talking about the ERPs, there are a lot of different ERP systems out there, and it's key to work with a provider that has a deep experience of integrating to those ERPs to be able to get that master data and be able to run the processes with. They're going to be potentially multiple ERP environments. Acquisitions is one way that a lot of companies grow over time. And the likelihood of an acquisition having the same exact ERP system that you're running is next to none. So you have to be able to work in a multiple ERP environment, extract the data as needed to be able to leverage it for the automating of the process, and then have that be updated in those ERP systems. And then finally, the order archiving. You want to be able to deal with audits. You want to be able to have your CSR folks pull those orders back up and look at them later to work with the customer if there's a problem. You need everything archived and text searchable so you can bring this back up and work with that information. So this, just real briefly, is the interface that one of the CSRs would work with. Very straightforward. In the middle, you have a pane that is the example of if this is an order. For instance, if we're doing order processing, that might be a PO. And you can see your header information, your line item information. On the left, you have a validation screen that's filling in all of that information for you, so you're not having to do all of the data entry. If there are any questions around it, or if anything is grabbed incorrectly, the CSR can just grab it and correct it. The machine learning from that point forward will take and do it automatically the next time. The other key pieces are the communication, where you can communicate there to the right to internal stakeholders to solve problems. And you can also have a means of communicating with your customer if there's a problem to be able to solve those problems as well. So this is, again, an idea of utilizing the technology to better strengthen the workforce to be able to better service the customers. And speaking of credible voices, here's some 3 different credible voices. These are escrow customers utilizing different processes on that platform. The first one here is Accord. They're in the pharmaceutical industry. They utilize the order management. They're utilizing the order management, automating what we were just talking about. They're getting great results where 80% of their orders, they've increased it by 80%. They've reduced the amount of time from 3 minutes down to about 33 seconds for processing orders. That's given them back 190 hours a month that their people then can be repurposed at higher levels to have more interaction time with customers. And I apologize, it did not move forward. There's the slide. There's Accord, and again, that was the results. Again, faster order processing time, 3 minutes to 33 seconds, and 190 hours that saved each time. The next customer is Toshiba. and Toshiba Business Systems, you know, invoice delivery is what this is speaking to. And delivering invoices in this industry has always been somewhat problematic. And it certainly is in all of those channels that I was discussing. So for Toshiba to be able to get results that are reducing their day sale outstanding and generating that type of an ROI on the project itself made this a real winner. And then finally, we have Trek. Trek is a customer that's utilizing the credit management and the collections management. One of the biggest things there, again, instead of working from spreadsheets, pulling reports out of the ERP system and trying to make sense of the priorities, it's allowed them to create strategies around credit and around collections. So they're more nimble when it comes to responding to customer needs, whether that would be additional credit to be able to make additional purchases, or whether they understand they need to start to pull back a little bit based on a payment history for a particular customer. And then in that payment history, on the collection side, you have strategies that are developed. So every morning when your team wakes up and starts to work with making the needed collections, they know exactly which customers they need to be able to call. They have all the data at their fingertips. They have all of the history of the interactions so that they can be the most efficient possible. And then this is from the Hackett Group paper that I mentioned a little bit ago. So the name of that paper is Building a Top-Performing Customer Cash Process. And this steps through, as Howard talked about the technology maturity map, this steps through the customer to cash technology maturity matrix. And what you see in the first frame are the folks that are lagging. And when it comes to lagging, you're talking about a lack of integration. You're talking about extensive data re-entry, obviously a very error-prone process. You're talking about multiple ERPs, low percentage of automation, manual reporting, and really no visibility to the performance, no scorecards or dashboards, anything like that. As you move to the achieving, which is really kind of the peer, the industry standards, you're starting to get a little bit better integration, but you still have a multiple ERP environment. Your automation is still pretty limited. You might have some tools, but you don't really have strategies in place. You're still doing a lot of manual reporting. As you're moving forward then to exceeding and then to leading, what you start to find out is the automation continues to step up. You're leveraging your data from these consolidated ERPs, if you have them, in a better way. You're building a much deeper and more mature data warehouse that you can then do scorecarding and look to dashboards from to be able to manage performance and be able to improve there. And ultimately, you're getting to a point where it's not 100%, but you have a vast percentage that would be automated or touchless when it comes to moving through those key processes of either order processing, credit management, collections management, cash application. And as you get up into the exceeding and the leading categories, you're now actually being able to deal with dispute management as well, which is big. So this is a journey. You obviously don't want to be left lagging in this journey. Very happy to say that from an Esker customer perspective, our customers are in the achieving and in the exceeding and leading categories, certainly based on their efforts to deploy this type of solution for those back office processes. And so to finish up, a couple final slides here about Esker. Esker has been around quite some time. We are certainly a leader in the field. For order processing, as an example, you're talking about 400 plus different customers utilizing the order processing, over 6,000 customers worldwide using our cloud-based platform. We're running over 2 million orders a month through the platform on that type of order processing, supporting 130 different languages from an OCR standpoint. And that feeds into the final slide, which is which is around the footprint. And obviously, we have a worldwide presence, working in countries throughout the world. A very key component of that is actually compliance. Language support is a little piece of it, but compliance. Invoice delivery, turns out that there's a lot of compliance for delivering invoices country by country throughout the EU. If you don't have a company that understands that, you very likely could get in problems. So not only having the footprint, but the expertise to work in country in all of these countries from around the world is a real strength of the company. With that, that's really the slides that I've got. So I think in the 10 minutes we have left, Howard, we can open it up for questions.
Absolutely, Dale. First one, we've been talking about ERPs. One of our attendees says, my company has multiple ERPs currently. Can your solution handle that?
Sure, and that's a good question. We get that question quite often, right? And absolutely, we can deal with a multiple ERP environment. It's a strength of the platform. And as I'd mentioned before, as organizations grow, they typically, have to deal with bringing on a company that has an ERP that doesn't align to their current one, right? So working within that space, being ERP agnostic, having the skill sets to be able to write outside of the ERP, but integrate to it so that you can pull the needed data to be able to support those processes is important and is certainly a strength of a platform and a company like Esker.
Okay. Another attendee, somewhat similar question, although moving forward a little more faster. We're currently looking into upgrading our ERP. Wouldn't that eliminate the need for automating? If not, which should come first?
Well, it's again a good question, a little bit of a chicken and the egg question, right? Yeah. In the situation, on ERPs, obviously, if you're thinking about upgrading an ERP, that's a massive project, right? And certainly ERPs can handle some of the same functionality as a platform like Esker handles, but it is not as tailored to the AP or AR processes specifically. It's not as feature rich from that standpoint. And the learning curve around learning a new ERP system compared to learning a platform that's focused specifically on AP and AR is a big difference, right? So, and we find customers in some type of a transition one way or another. It's either a multiple ERP system that they're having to deal with and maybe trying to consolidate around. Maybe it's an on-prem that they're trying to get to the cloud. There is always some kind of transition going. And so the customers will take a look at that and they need to make a decision. But in most cases, the decision is that you can move forward with automating these processes. They ride outside of the ERP. And so you can get the value of having those automated processes in place and then be in transition, whatever that is, whether it's on-prem to the cloud or from one ERP to another. You can work with that through that integration or through that support down the road once you've already got that process set.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Here's what I think is a very common problem that most everybody faces at one time or another frequently. The attendee says, our IT department is swamped right now. How could we tackle a digital transformation project with minimal resources like this?
Well, that's always part of the challenge, right? In terms of resources, it's either time, money, or people. And certainly IT resources are typically always stretched. So being able to, first of all, work with a cloud-based solution, that means there is no on-prem installation of software, no maintenance of that software, no patching, no keeping it up, because that's all taken care of for you up in the cloud. So from that perspective, that's a lot lighter lift on the part of an IT organization because they're not actually implementing or supporting it after, right? Past that, in terms of the level of lift for IT organizations. There is an engagement there, but remember, working with a system outside that ERP, it's more nimble. It does not require all of the data from the ERP. It requires certain data sets from that ERP system. And so it's a coordination effort of creating the right kind of files, the right kind of tables, and the coordination of that information flowing back and forth. There's some time involved in doing that, but from an implementation project standpoint, the lifting there is much less than, again, if you were looking at a typical software installation.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts that occurred to me about this question, because obviously the question suggests that they're talking about the people shortage more than time or money. And I've always found that there are two ways to overcome that. One is to reach out and find a competent partner to come in and do it for you. I would think some of the organizations we've both mentioned in the course of our presentations have the capacity to do that. I'm sure there are plenty of others. In that context, I think that digital transformation is a bit more difficult to bring somebody in for. You might instead want to bring someone in to backfill your people. Let them take over the day-to-day that your people are currently swamped with, and let your people who are familiar with your environment, familiar with your organization, who are going to be much more sensitive to the realities of what culturally is required, let them focus on a digital transformation. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. The one other aspect to it, again, remember this centers a lot around that integration to those ERPs. And so most organizations will have an ERP practice. They might even have a consultancy that supports them from that standpoint. So certainly some projects will leverage a customer's existing support that they already have in place to work with the ERP systems.
Great. I think we have time for one or two more questions. Let me try this one. And I'm not exactly sure what the attendee is referring to when they say, in this context, could you touch on OKRs and the difference between the two?
I'm not familiar with OKRs. Yeah. Is it defined?
It isn't. What I would suggest, if if you could email us, the email addresses should be available in the window. Email a little explanation of what you're talking about and what you were comparing it to, because unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure what we were talking about at the time that you posted the question. Similarly, the other question is, what have you found, and perhaps you're familiar with this, what have you found are the key organizational change management KPIs?
In terms, some of those change management KPIs that are looked at is, let's talk about, for instance, invoice delivery. Moving from that postal to the e-invoicing is obviously a very large metric around that. From a change management perspective, moving the organization from maybe doing that in-house yourself or having that outsourced to be able to then ultimately rely on an organization that can help you manage your way out of the postal is a key ability in terms of those metrics.
Okay. Yeah, I think it serves to say that outsourcing, bringing in somebody from the outside, is a tool that should be used strategically. You really need to think about how you want to apply outside resources to get the best result. And I think often we depend upon the outside resources to tell us how to use them. My suggestion is, think through that a little more deeply internally before you reach out to others. With that, we are coming up on the top of the hour. I want to thank everybody for being with us today. I hope this was informative and helpful for you. And with that, Raquel, why don't you wrap it up?
All right. Thank you so much, Howard and Dale, for being with us today and sharing your expertise. We truly appreciate you. And thank you also to the audience for attending today's webcast, which was sponsored by Esker and presented by RedmondMag.com. This concludes today's webcast. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.